Eala from the Philippines could be the next big thing in pro tennis.
This was a massive spot to be in for such a young talent, to have a sold-out crowd completely behind.
To do well on the WTA tour. I'm super proud of what I was able to accomplish, but the end goal is to win slams.
Federer's former coach just broke the internet. Muchova closed it 6-0, 6-2 at Hard Rock Stadium. Yet the Filipino crowd noise didn't die with the final point. Paul Anacone, the tactical mind behind Wimbledon 2012 and Sampras's 14-slam blueprint, exploded on TC Live with 9 words nobody in that studio expected. She's got a smile that lights up a room. Not her forehand, not her ranking at world number 29. Her presence, and the WTA has been quietly glorifying that presence on every promotional platform for 12 straight months. A year ago, she entered Miami 2025 as a wild card outside the top 100, then dismantled Keys, Ostapenko, and Swiatek consecutively, before the broader tennis world even knew her surname. Alison Risky Amritraj searched tennis history for a comparable fanbase phenomenon, landed on Sanya Mirza's era, then said Alex Eala's ceiling sits incomparably higher. Jeannie Bouchard invoked Taylor Swift without hesitation. Jessica Pegula watched stadiums fill and called it something special. 3 words carrying the weight of someone witnessing something genuinely unprecedented.
A perfect finish, really well constructed point again. Left Baptiste guessing which way the last ball was going.
Tournaments are such great experiences for me, especially playing in front of the best crowd ever. And
I'm really happy to advance to the next round. Obviously, it's not in the way I wanted it.
The girl from Quezon City who once ate at childhood restaurants anonymously now gets stopped mid-street for photographs. Subscribe for forensic tennis analysis that goes beyond the highlights. How one 20-year-old from the Philippines rewired professional tennis's entire commercial and emotional architecture, that full story gets dissected right now. 12 months ago, nobody outside the Philippines had circled Alexandra Eala's name on a tournament draw. She arrived at the 2025 Miami Open, carrying a wild card, ranked somewhere around number 140 in the world, and the general expectation from the tennis establishment was an early exit against more experienced opposition. What followed across the next 2 weeks didn't just defy expectation, it permanently altered the trajectory of women's tennis's global audience. Her first significant scalp was Madison Keys, the 2025 Australian Open champion. A player ranked inside the top 5 carrying full Grand Slam momentum into that match was tactically outmaneuvered by a 19-year-old who had no business being on that court by conventional ranking logic. The victory didn't arrive through luck or a single inspired set. Eala controlled the tempo, took the ball early, and redirected pace in ways that Keys couldn't recalibrate against quickly enough. Jelena Ostapenko followed. A former French Open champion with one of the most destructive ball-striking games in women's tennis, Ostapenko presented an entirely different tactical problem. Flat, heavy, unpredictable. Eala solved it anyway, winning in 2 tiebreak sets, 7-6, 7-5, in a match that required sustained mental composure from someone who had never experienced that stage before. Then came Iga Swiatek. The 6-time Grand Slam champion, ranked world number 2 at the time, walked onto that court as the overwhelming favorite against a wild card who had already exhausted considerable physical and emotional resources. What Anacone later highlighted on TC Live wasn't the tactical execution of that victory, it was the manner in which Eala conducted herself through it. Grace, humility, a smile that, in his words, lights up a room. Not a fist pump that shook the arena. Not a roar directed at a partisan crowd. A smile that communicated genuine joy, genuine gratitude, and something the sport hadn't seen carry quite that particular quality in a very long time.
Well, she's being told X, Y, and Z, and I don't think.
Of course, the atmosphere in each tournament has been amazing, and it's been a different start this year than any other year I've ever had. So
Jessica Pegula eventually ended that Miami run in the semifinals. But by then, the damage to the status quo was done. A nation of 115 million people had discovered women's tennis simultaneously, and the WTA had discovered something potentially more valuable than a top 10 player, a genuine global phenomenon still in the early chapters of her development. Paul Annacone doesn't appear on Tennis Channel Live to distribute empty compliments. His coaching career operated at the absolute pinnacle of the sport. Pete Sampras across 14 Grand Slam titles, Roger Federer through Wimbledon 2012, and the sustained precision of his early 30s peak. When Annacone identifies something in a player, the observation carries the weight of someone who has spent decades distinguishing genuine talent from manufactured hype. His TC Live comments about Eala were delivered ahead of her Indian Wells debut in early March 2026, her first appearance at a WTA 1000 Masters event outside of Miami. The framing of his praise was deliberate and specific. He wasn't reacting to a highlight reel. He was responding to 12 months of accumulated evidence about what Eala does to an arena's atmosphere from the moment she walks onto a court. She's got a smile that lights up a room. 9 words, but the technical context surrounding them carries equal weight. Annacone explicitly noted her good hand-eye coordination and ability to take the ball early and redirect, which is a coach's way of saying her game is structurally equipped to compete against bigger, stronger opponents without requiring equivalent physical dimensions. In an era dominated by power baseline players averaging well above Eala's 5 feet 7 inches frame, that timing-based architecture is genuinely rare. He also acknowledged the fan phenomenon with a clarity that went beyond surface-level observation. Whenever you see players from smaller countries, the fans are so passionate when they get to the top. A statement that contextualizes what Filipino supporters have brought to every tournament Eala has entered in 2026. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Indian Wells, Miami. The flags, the noise, the sheer volume of traveling supporters who have turned neutral venues into something resembling home fixtures for a player competing thousands of miles from Quezon City. Former world number 18, Alison Risk Amritraj, sharing the TC Live panel, was asked directly whether she could recall any women's player generating comparable global support throughout their career. Her answer reached back through tennis history and landed on Sania Mirza, the Indian star whose fan base followed her across continents during her peak years. Then Risk Amritraj immediately added that Eala's ceiling sits incomparably higher than anything Mirza's phenomenon ultimately reached. That is not a casual observation from a former professional. That is a considered assessment from someone who competed on tour during Mirza's era and witnessed that support structure firsthand. The WTA glorifying Alex Eala didn't emerge from a single marketing meeting. It developed organically from the moment Miami 2025 ended, and the tour's commercial instincts recognized something that broadcast numbers and ticket sales data confirmed almost immediately. Tournament directors noticed first. The Dubai Tennis Championships director addressed it publicly ahead of Eala's debut at the WTA 1000 event in February 2026, explaining the concentration of Filipino fans across the Middle East and describing Eala's arrival as something that would upgrade the tennis and our tournament. That is a tournament director whose commercial interests are tied directly to ticket revenue and broadcast engagement, voluntarily acknowledging that one player's presence changes the financial proposition of hosting an event. Dubai delivered exactly what was anticipated. Eala defeated Jasmine Paolini, ranked number 7 globally at the time, a 2-time Grand Slam finalist, 6-1, 7-6 in the third round, generating the kind of crowd atmosphere that hard-court tournaments in February rarely produce. When she looked into the stands after winning that match, her description was immediate and unfiltered. I looked up and there were Filipinos for days. The WTA's social media team had that quote syndicated across platforms before the post-match press conference concluded. Coco Gauff, the sport's most commercially prominent active player, carrying 2.3 million Instagram followers and multiple Grand Slam titles, was asked during the Sunshine Swing which player would outsell everyone on hypothetical jerseys. She named herself initially, then reconsidered and acknowledged Eala would likely surpass her. Iva Jovic answered the same question without hesitation. Alex Eala, because so many fans. These are not manufactured endorsements extracted through diplomatic obligation. These are competitors, women who understand the commercial landscape of professional tennis intimately, volunteering an honest assessment of where the sport's gravitational center is currently shifting. Jeannie Bouchard went further on a separate Tennis Channel appearance, invoking Taylor Swift as the closest cultural parallel for what Eala's fanbase represents. The comparison isn't about musical genre or personal biography. It's about the specific quality of devotion that certain public figures generate, where supporters don't merely follow a career, but construct a significant portion of their own identity around it. Filipino fans at Eala's matches aren't casual tennis spectators who happen to purchase tickets. They are organized, passionate, internationally mobile, and growing in number with each tournament result. None of this exists in a vacuum separate from what Eala personally carries onto every court. She is the first player from the Philippines to reach the WTA Top 100 in the ranking system's history, dating back to 1975. Her career high of world number 29, achieved on March 16, 2026, didn't arrive through accumulated points across 100 forgettable qualifying rounds. It arrived through direct confrontation with elite opponents at the sport's biggest events. The psychological burden attached to that particular kind of history is something most professional athletes never encounter. Every match carries national significance beyond the points at stake. Every loss gets processed not just by coaching staff and personal support networks, but by an entire country's sports media cycle. Eala addressed this directly in a WTA interview ahead of the 2026 Miami Open, describing the mental discipline required to separate the weight of expectation from the actual tactical work of competing. I lay out the options or the perspectives on how to look at different things. Will this make me feel good? No. Will this make me feel good? No. Feeling bad is inevitable, but there are ways that can be lessened. That level of emotional intelligence at 20 years old, articulating a functional psychological framework for managing pressure in real time, is precisely what Anacone was gesturing towards when he described her conducting herself through the Swiatek victory with grace and humility. Technical ability gets players into big matches. Emotional architecture determines whether they can sustain performance across the duration of a career. The 6-0, 6-2 loss to Karolina Muchova in Miami's round of 16 provided the clearest current evidence of where the ceiling still sits. Muchova converted every breakpoint opportunity, controlled the net with surgical precision, and exposed the gap between Eala's present level and the top 8 bracket she is actively targeting. The defeat was comprehensive. Honest assessment of it matters more than protective framing, because understanding exactly where the tactical deficiencies exist is the foundation from which the next developmental phase gets built. What the crowd did afterward tells a different story about trajectory. They didn't leave, they didn't fall quiet. The noise that greeted Eala's exit from that court carried the specific quality of supporters who understand they are watching a journey rather than a finished product, and who have already decided the destination is worth every mile of the process. Anacone's words on TC Live weren't retrospective admiration for a breakthrough already completed. They were a forward projection from someone whose professional instincts are calibrated to identify careers at inflection points. A 20-year-old ranked number 29 globally, carrying 3 top 10 victories in 2026 alone, with hand-eye coordination and early ball timing that Anacone specifically flagged as structurally equipped for elite competition. That profile does not plateau at 29. The clay season arrives next. Roland Garros represents Eala's most complex upcoming challenge, given that her timing-based game requires adjustment against the higher bounce and slower pace that clay introduces. Her first Grand Slam victory came at the 2025 US Open, a hard-court environment that suits her natural ball-striking rhythm, and building equivalent results on clay will test whether the tactical range Anacone identified can translate across surfaces. The commercial machinery surrounding her will only intensify regardless of short-term results. Broadcast negotiations, wildcard allocations, show court scheduling decisions, all of these now carry an Eala variable that tournament directors and WTA executives factor into planning conversations. That dynamic brings its own complications for a player still developing the physical and tactical tools her ranking demands. But the smile remains. In every post-match interview, through losses that would visibly deflate more experienced professionals, the quality Anacone identified on TC Live stays intact. It isn't performance, it isn't brand management executed by a media consultant. It is what it appears to be, a 20-year-old from Quezon City who genuinely loves competing on the biggest stages the sport provides, surrounded by people who traveled thousands of miles specifically to watch her do it. The WTA didn't manufacture this story. It recognized one already being written and positioned itself close enough to benefit from wherever the next chapter lands. That is the full story behind 9 words that stopped a Tennis Channel panel cold and sent tennis Twitter into a spiral it hasn't fully recovered from. Paul Anacone has coached players who won a combined 34 Grand Slam titles between them, and he chose to spend his TC Live segment talking about a 20-year-old's smile and what it does to an arena. If that doesn't tell you everything about the moment Alexandra Eala currently occupies in professional tennis, nothing will. If this level of forensic storytelling is what you want from your tennis content, the context behind the quotes, the commercial mechanics behind the glorification, the tactical reality beneath the highlight packages, then subscribing to this channel is the most useful thing you do today. Hit the notification bell as well because the next breakdown is already in production. Drop your thoughts on Eala's clay prospects in the comments. The conversation happening down there is consistently worth reading. Share this with one tennis fan in your circle who still thinks this is just a feel-good story about a girl with a nice smile. It is considerably more than that, and now you know exactly why.